everybody, it is Dean Z speaking to you from Jeffries Hall at the University of Michigan Law School. There's a heat advisory today, so I'm wearing my sleeveless outfit, although it is air-conditioned and delightful inside. So we have all the modern amenities here in Ann Arbor. Today, I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence. Thank you so much. You guys gave great questions to my plea for questions, so thank you so much. On my way into work today, I was listening to a little news podcast that I listened to, and I heard something about, this is just freaky to me, about how now there is a thing in corporate America where some CEOs make holograms of themselves or whatever, and like put the hologram in a meeting, like zoom into a meeting with a hologram, and they're not there because they're too busy to talk to you. Their employees, but their hologram has got you. And apparently some professors are using AI versions of themselves. I don't think holograms, because I don't know, I work in higher ed and I don't think we've got the budget for making holograms. But surprisingly, not at all. Students have not loved the AI professors. They want the real deal. So that seems like a great start to answering your questions, because here's the thing, AI, lots of utility, I guess, and people are certainly doing things with it. But I think most of us have some level of discomfort with it. I know I do. So let's get started. These questions sort of reflect the full range of feeling about it. So I'm just going to go in order that I have them here. So the first one came from an Instagram comment by Tehalations, I think. This person says, I have a question about the appropriate use of AI in the law school application process. For resumes and CVs, many people recommend using AI to analyze a job description and suggest edits so that bullet points better highlight relevant experience. Assuming the experiences themselves are truthful, it's good, I'll assume that, and only the wording is refined, would a similar approach be considered acceptable when preparing materials for law school applications? Love this question. Great question, because I tend to think of AI just in the context of the actual essays. And I am aware of this use of AI in resumes, and I just hadn't really ever pieced it together. So I love that you brought this forward. First, I should say, at Michigan, the rule is, unless we say otherwise, we are assuming you are not using AI to draft your materials. We make an analogy between AI and humans, where we say it's okay to have a human, give general editing advice, sort of be there for brainstorming about, the merit of a given topic. But they're not supposed to draft it for you. They're not supposed to do like massive editing, so on and so forth. So that's our rule. Other schools have different rules, and I do not purport to understand the rules of all schools, and I am frankly aware that many schools are silent on what exactly their rule is, making things complicated for the applicant. So I guess I'd say if you have sort of an edgy use of AI in mind and you want to make sure it's okay, I think probably the right thing is to reach out to a given school that if they have not given enough guidance on this topic. So with that said, I would say at Michigan, that is an acceptable use. The use proposed by Tehalations is an acceptable use of AI, because I think of this as really just sort of a light edit of a resume that I wouldn't be surprised to have a pre-law advisor do for an applicant, or even a parent or whoever, helping you sort of frame your resume in a smart way. And I think it could be really useful. And frankly, I get so much info from the resume that having AI just help you frame things in a clear and coherent way will help me understand more about what you did. So I think the assumption that everything is truthful is an important one. You shouldn't let AI insert any puffery, which is actually a term from the law. You shouldn't let it insert puffery into your experiences to make you sound like you were doing things you weren't doing. But sort of narrowing it and making the language more precise, that is very useful, and I think totally appropriate. Second question from the same writer. I'm also curious about writing style. There seems to be a growing perception that certain grammatical conventions or stylistic choices, like the Oxford comma, em dashes, or vocabulary, are AI coded. As someone who naturally incorporates use of such grammar, should applicants avoid them out of concern that their writing will be perceived as AI generated, or is it better to write authentically and not worry about those associations? Another great question. I hope you're applying to Michigan. I'm very interested in you and your thinking. So no, you do not avoid them. First of all, Oxford commas, as I have discussed in this very program, they're just right. You should always use an Oxford comma. It's insane not to use an Oxford comma. Em dash, very useful little tool. I love an em dash. So I would say use the full range of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Punctuation.
Punctuation. Thank you, Dustin. Use the full range of punctuation. Maybe I need a cup of coffee or something. In your writing that you would normally use the vocabulary you would normally use. Be yourself, be authentic. That is the best way to not seem like a robot, is to write the way you like to write. Do not go, into gyrations to try to excise language that you would normally be using just because you fear that it will be also the same language that some robot somewhere is using. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Thank you for asking that. Next question. Can AI be used, Breck asks, can an applicant use AI to read a personal statement and then help fix and adjust grammar before sending it to admissions? Yeah, I guess. That one's a little trickier. I feel like, so Grammarly is a form of AI. It's not generative AI, but it is a kind of AI. And I would say absolutely it's fine to use spell check. It's fine to use Grammarly, which is like enhanced spell check. And then this is sort of a next level, I would say, feeding it in and getting changes. I mean, I guess I'd say the trick here is, like I've talked about, it's appropriate to use sort of a light editing, whether from a human or from a device. But it's not good to have like a heavy edit where you might actually be rewriting paragraphs. The problem here is, I think if you feed in your essay and ask for grammatical edits, you might get back something that is very revised, and then it seems unlikely to me that you will be then able to just choose to forego what you may be seeing as an improvement by AI over your original document. So I guess I'd say you should be careful in using the prompts that you are asking for light grammatical corrections, and not a heavy edit, so that you're just not tempted to have this thing rewrite it and then you would just adopt that, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I think this question and my halting answer really goes to show how difficult this area is. Like I don't know that there are a lot of clear answers here, but I think it's still helpful to talk through them. This is a lot like what we do in law school. Like, well, is this okay? What about this? And then you get narrower and narrower until you get to an answer. So maybe we will together reach truth. But I'm just going to come out right away and say, like, these are complicated questions. Okay. Next, this is from Beanbag. Beanbag asks specifically about Michigan. The Michigan application last year had a question that invited applicants to use an LLM, large language model, to answer it. I'm curious how many students chose to answer that prompt, and if you have any general takeaways from that question. Do you expect to do something similar again this year? And then there's other questions that I don't want to get to right yet, because I'm dividing my questions into what is about an applicant and what is about the school. The next set of questions are about the school. But so these applicant questions about our particular essay, great question. So we actually counted, and about 5%, I think it's 5% of the applicants answered the question, and about 7% of the admitted pool answered it. So that meant, like, of the people who answered it, there was like a slight favoring, not on purpose favoring, but just as it turned out, the people who were answering that were at a slightly higher rate likely to get in. I don't think it was necessarily because they wrote that essay, but I think it might be associated with other characteristics that are appealing. So I will say that a lot of people who used the essay, who answered the essay, said, I've never used it before, and then proceeded with the essay. And it, honestly, those essays tended not to be good. Understandably, this was someone who is not, really adept at using AI, and they were usually using it to say, this is why I don't like AI, which is a completely valid perspective, but perhaps not a great way to use your essay real estate, right? This isn't your strength, and so I don't know that it made a lot of sense to do that. And my first readers did not love the prompt. They felt like, in general, they weren't getting a lot out of it about the applicant. So we have changed the prompt this year, so there will be one essay that is specifically for AI, but it's slightly different wording, asking about how you might have used AI in a particular project. So we'll see. I still think it is a fruitful area for us to explore as an admissions office, and maybe the first readers will enjoy it more in this format. I will say I did find it useful. I did find it instructive to see how people used it. I particularly enjoyed the people who were very clear about what their prompts were and who showed their work, as they say in math class. So, so thanks for asking about that. And I will return to school-specific, or the questions about how schools use AI later. Okay, next. Titan asks, I know letters of recommendation can sound generic and robotic if written by someone who is, say, unable to write with emotion and as a result may come across as AI, especially when plugged into AI detectors. Do admissions officers actively check for AI in any part of the application? How does all of that work? I guess that's really a question that's sort of halfway between what the applicant can do and halfway between what the school can do. So I will say I wouldn't worry about your letters of recommendation. We get them from a wide range of backgrounds, and some backgrounds are sort of notoriously low affect, low key, not full of praise, and I feel like we are pretty adept at reading those. And as we discussed, I have an episode out on letters of recommendation. If you haven't seen that, you might want to check it out. But letters of rec can be very helpful. It's rare that they're actually harmful. So I really wouldn't worry about it. And if a school is using AI detectors, I think it's very unlikely that they are using them on the letters of recommendation themselves. Because honestly, it's up to a letter writer. They can use AI if they want, and that's not violating any of our rules. We're telling the applicant what to do, not the letter writer. But this question of how often do schools check for AI with formal detection methods, I don't know the answer to that. Schools are pretty cagey about that. I will say I'm very skeptical of doing it because I think everything I've ever seen says they're imperfect and you will get way too many false positives. And so I don't think it's fair to applicants to do it. But here's the real problem with using AI in your essays, regardless of what. I should say one other thing, which I also know a couple of admissions officers anyway, who are very convinced that they can detect AI writing. They've told me their methods, and I'm going to cry, BS. I don't think they're right. I don't think they can do that. I think they're overestimating their own abilities there. But it's happening. So when I'm reading essays in 2026, I'm not thinking, is this AI, is this not AI? What I'm thinking is this good writing, is this not good writing? And honestly, a lot of the little quirks of AI are very much aligned with what I think of is not great writing. And that's the real danger. And it's also a danger that if you're very dependent on AI, you're not going to be as good at assessing what is good writing. So you're not necessarily going to detect this yourself as the writer. If you're inclined to use it, it's probably because you don't love writing. And if you don't love writing, you're probably not great at it. And if you're not great at it, you're not going to know that the AI isn't great at it. So it's really a danger for an applicant. And I think what mostly results is just bland, boring, uninteresting writing. And I don't get a sense of the applicant. And to be frank, I feel like we are seeing more applications that way, where the person is clearly bright, clearly can do the work, but just don't have any sense of the person. It's like, meh. That's how we feel a lot of the time. And I suspect that a lot of that is because of an infestation of AI into the application process. I can't prove it. It's not even really what I'm worried about. All I'm worried about is, I don't know you. You're not doing yourself any favors by using AI. So I would strongly discourage you from leaning on that, even if you feel very confident you will never get caught. It's really not about getting caught here. One, it's about your integrity. You're signing something saying you're not using it. And two, it is about, I'm just telling you, it's not a tool that's doing you any favors, at least not yet. With regard to the question of the rules that schools use for whether or not you're allowed to use AI, there's a question from Rose that I think is really on point. I've noticed some schools have been asking applicants if AI was used in their application materials, which is true. Like some schools will just, they're not saying you shouldn't use it, they're just saying, tell us if you did. How does it look if someone answers yes, when perhaps all they did is use an AI grammar check? Also, do you think there may be a shift in schools to include interviews in the admissions process if they don't already? That's a great question, Rose. I think that if a school is saying, we don't mind if you use it, just let us know if you did, I think they usually ask you to say how you used it. So at least the schools that I'm familiar with. So you would have an opportunity to say, I just used it to check grammar. And I can't imagine any school would be concerned about that. And I think in general, if they're asking it, they're probably not as hostile to AI as some other schools that are, have a different approach. So I think if they're asking yes or no, tell us. You should be frank. And to the extent you think, well, this doesn't look good, then maybe that means you're using too much AI. Listen to your own gut. Like if you feel a little embarrassed about the extent to which you used AI to write your essay, maybe dial it back. But I personally wouldn't hesitate if a school is asking you that, to be honest and to be forthcoming about how you've used it. In terms of using interviews, I don't know about interviews. I still am skeptical of the utility of interviews myself, but I do know that there is a real hunger for schools for looking for ways to assess applicants where they can be confident that AI is not shaping the material that they are getting. So yeah, maybe they'll be using interviews, maybe they'll come up with other clever ways to try and get information that they can be sure is free of AI. I think it's a work in progress, so yes. Okay, here's a great question. Should people list AI proficiency skills on their resumes? I know that it is increasingly something employers are looking for, but I worry that for law school, it kind of is like saying one of your skills is cheating. That's funny. I really like that. No, I think you should list it because first of all, you're correct. Employers are interested in it and law schools are preparing you for employment. And we know that there are legal employers. I've had legal employers say, if someone says they absolutely aren't using any AI and they don't want to use any AI, that's not someone we're going to make an offer to. That's not all law firms. That's not all legal employers, certainly. But it is some. So I think, if that is something that you pride yourself on, your AI skills, that is absolutely appropriate. And I guess I think that someone who says they have AI skills is probably somebody who is sophisticated about the appropriate, inappropriate uses. So in some ways, I'd say it would actually give me, this is someone who's being forthcoming, this is someone who knows what's going on, that would actually give me some comfort. So I definitely think you should say that. But I'm now going to look for the person who lists one of their areas of interest as cheating. I love that. Okay, now I want to turn to what about how are schools using AI? So this question is, how much is Michigan currently using AI in admissions, either for evaluating applications or for doing things like compiling notes? We're not using it at all. Every year since the advent of ChatGPT getting big, we have played with it during the summer in various ways, like from an admissions standpoint. So we've feed it questions like, how does it answer these sort of standard admissions questions, similar to the ones that I answer here in A to Z? How does, can we use it to detect what's written can we use it to detect what is written by AI and what isn't? Can we compare different parts of the application to each other to see if parts are written by AI and not AI? Can we use AI to tell us things that we're already looking for? Like, if we think someone seems, I don't know, sketchy in some way, does AI think this person seems sketchy in some way? So we try to come up with as many different scenarios as we can, and we play around with it, and it's always useless. And we always say, we don't need it, not yet, anyway, and we go on our merry way. But we're always thinking about it. I don't like to get left behind on things, but so far, no, not useful. I don't know how much other schools are using it. I think there are many people who are very loath to use it and other people who are more enthusiastic about it. I would say, I'm on a little committee from a great organization dedicated to helping students. And it's a committee that is basically, what are the do's and don'ts for AI in higher ed? Sort of just a thought project and trying to come up with some guidelines, some sensible guidelines. And I would say, I think the single biggest thing we all agree on is that there has to be disclosure if a school is using AI, or if you're using AI in any capacity, you need to be disclosing it. That's not a law. That's not a standard rule. That to me is common sense and clear. But that's just my opinion, right? And it is part of the do's and don'ts that this committee has come up with. But it is not anything that is enforceable. So I don't know the extent to which people agree with that, and the extent to which people would feel bound by that. I know I would. If it's going to have an effect on an applicant's outcomes, I think I should disclose that. But we're at the very beginning of this, so there is no consensus on what has to be done, and I don't know what other schools are doing. So that just answers a few questions I got that were very similar on that topic about basically how are schools using it. I want to just interject here a critiker from someone who's naming themselves Udi Kumra, where Udi Kumra says, maybe this is a hot take, but I very firmly believe that AI should have no place in schools. It teaches students to subvert their own thinking with a machine, and school is about learning how to think. In the admissions process, you should have to portray yourself and your ideas authentically, not polished up by AI. In the classroom, you should be learning how to think like a lawyer. If firms, companies, etc. want their workforce to use AI to become more efficient, then they can train themselves. Blah, blah, blah. I would start to think that I'm not getting my money's worth if a law school was teaching me how to use an LLM rather than to think for myself. I acknowledge that as someone associated with creative industries, I have a strong anti-AI bias, so others may feel differently. I don't feel much differently, except I do think schools actually do need to teach people who want to learn it how to use AI, because it is a skill that you're going to need in the workplace. And we're a professional school, and we are, as I say, preparing you for the profession. And there are many employers who want their employees to use this, and you won't get the job in many instances. So they're not going to train you because you're not going to have the job in the first place. I worry enormously about using AI in writing and the way it will atrophy our own ability to think. I have grave concerns about it. You should hear Mr. Deansy on this topic. He's 10 years older than I am. He's ready to burn it all down. He's so upset about the idea. He said to me this morning, he said, AI is going to start writing briefs. And I said, honey, AI already writes briefs. He was dejected. That's a little glimpse into our marriage that maybe you didn't need to have, but whatever. Anyway, so I understand where you're coming from, but I do take issue with, I do think there needs to be some role for it in the educational process. But yeah, I'm worried. I'm with you. And then Apple user comes from a more cynical perspective. He just says, how come admissions offices can use it to enable their process, but students cannot to enable their efficiency? I don't know. I don't know exactly what you mean here. I don't think admissions offices, like I say, I don't think most of them are using it. And I don't know what you mean by enabling your efficiency. I don't know if you mean using it in the application. But I'd say the reason, if Michigan were to use it in the admissions process and still have a rule that you can't use it in the application, I'd say it's because I am trying to assess what you already know. And I can't do that if you're using AI. And my function as an admissions office is different than yours as an applicant. So those two things, that's apples and oranges, as they say. And I don't think that having a rule in one context necessarily tells you what the rule should be in a very different context. But I take your point, hypocrisy, etc. I'm not in favor of hypocrisy. So, okay, I like this one. How will applicants know if their applications are given a fair shot by schools using AI to evaluate their materials? Will there be options to choose a human-led review as opposed to AI-led? No, there will not be. I don't think there will be any such option. I think if a school chooses to use AI, you're just stuck with that school's assessment process. As I say, I think the solution here is that they have to disclose that they're using it in the ways in which they are using it, and then you can make a choice as an applicant whether or not to submit yourself to that process. But I don't think you can say, I want this other kind of process. I mean, I feel like it's like right now, Michigan has a particular process that involves you get evaluated by admissions professionals. Someone else reads it, maybe two people read it, then they give it to me as a decider and I make a decision. Some schools use faculty. You don't get to say, Michigan, I want to apply to you, but I want to use faculty the way they do at XYZ school. Like, sorry, that's not our process. If a school's using AI, I imagine that they have a little bit of a skeleton staff in the AI, in the admissions office. And so, yeah, they're probably not going to be able to accommodate people who choose to get evaluated one way or another. I take your point, but I don't think there's going to be freedom in this way. Which relates to the next question, which is, how can we maintain consent in not having our work/information put through AI as federal legislation made it regulation-free for all states? How do we avoid it being woven into our lives without our consent? Wish I could answer that. I cannot. It is like this train that is taking off, and I don't know how you stop it. I'll just say there's a great TV show on HBO called Hacks, and highly recommend. So funny, so good, so heartwarming. And there is a little part of one episode where one character talks to the other character about AI and the dangers of AI. And I mean, clearly the writers of the show have a strong view on it, but it was so beautiful and I thought so on point. So I'd refer you to that for just feeling those feelings. All right, and that's the AI questions. I hope that was useful. I really enjoyed answering them and thinking about all this. But now it's time for grammar. So what am I going to talk about? AI grammar, right? So Dustin asked Google AI to tell him what AI's grammar tells are, and it's just so weird. It's just like AI is saying, here's how to tell if I am writing for you or not. It's just such an odd thing. And then at the end, the AI said, is this for academic writing, marketing copying, or casual reading? Are you looking for tools to bypass AI detectors or simply understand the patterns better? I can provide specific strategies tailored to your exact scenario. So I just want to say, it's saying like, I can help you bypass AI detectors, which shouldn't be surprising or weird, because of course it would do that, but ugh, I don't like it. I don't like it, you guys. But okay, so this is very interesting. This is my favorite part, is it identifies particular vocabulary that AI tends to use. And it says, AI models favor polite, neutral, and helpful language, resulting in a distinct set of buzzwords that appear at much higher rates than in human text. And then they give these examples of adjectives and verbs: delve, foster, testament, crucial, underscore, tapestry, intricate, landscape, vital, and pivotal. And I would say I use a lot of those words. I don't I don't feel like I ever say delve, and I don't really say tapestry too much. And I don't say pivotal. Maybe I do. I don't know. But so that's tricky. I don't know what to say. I'd stick with my earlier advice. Don't excise these from your language just because AI says that it uses them a lot. But I think the lesson to take from this is don't use buzzwords. Like, look for crutches, linguistic crutches that you have in your writing. If you're saying the same word more than 2 times in a 3-page piece of writing, you're saying it too many times. So read with that in mind. Make sure, and this is whether you're using AI or not, So AI should do this too. Give it that advice if you're using it. But, just stay away from language that is a crutch, that isn't really the right word, that isn't really saying what you want to say, but it's just sort of a filler word, I guess I'd say. Anything else from here? Oh, wait, no, here's one more thing that I'll say. Also, apparently, AI has a persistent habit of breaking concepts into lists of 3 items, e.g., fast, reliable, and secure. So I'll be on the lookout for what it calls the triplets. Okay, so thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Thanks to Dustin for doing this AI work for me, crazy. And yeah, wherever you go, go blue.